Edel Quinn died in Africa in 1944. She was 36 years of age. For the previous 7 years, she had travelled all over East Africa as a lay Catholic missionary. All this time, she was fighting the tuberculosis that eventually killed her. Though born in Cork, by the age of 7, she was living in Dublin. She is variously described as being a little imp and a graceful and charming girl who loved dancing and playing the piano. At school, she excelled at sports and was elected head girl. She became a secretary at a tile works in Dublin. The French manager proposed to her, but she turned him down because she intended joining the Poor Clares. At the age of 20, she joined the Legion.
It was around this time that Edel joined the Legion, the organisation that had been established by Mr. Frank Duff. At this time, the organisation did visitation in homes, hospitals and other institutions. They also organised a project among the prostitutes in the slum areas of Dublin. Edel joined and very soon proved herself a worthy and hard-working legionary. The people who knew her then were aware of how frail she was, and yet her personality and her approach lifted her fellow legionaries.
Unfortunately, she fell ill to tuberculosis and spent 18 months in a sanatorium. She quickly resumed her legionary work. Despite her illness, she was considered for a missionary project to Africa.
By 1936, the Legion had spread to the United States and even to Africa. The Catholic authorities in East Africa were very anxious to have an envoy from the Legion working there. Edel's name was mentioned, but some of the concilium were reluctant to agree because of her health. One Carmelite priest, Father McGuinness, was very much against it because he was aware of the dangers, the primitive conditions and the diseases which are part and parcel of Africa. But Edel knew of these and still wanted to go. Father McGuinness gave her his blessing, saying, "Go off on your mission, Edel. God himself summons you to it." On October 24, 1936, Edel left Ireland. She sailed to Africa aboard the passenger liner Clongibby Castle.
Now, in the lifetime and the closing time of Pope Paul, he sent over his secretary, Father McGee, and asked us to give him a letter from Edel Quinn's correspondence, a letter which we thought was the most distinctive, characteristic document which ever proceeded from her. Well, now, at first thought that was asking us an impossibility, because she wrote at least a couple of letters every week, apart from others. And to pick out from that would be, well, impossibility. But as it was, one letter jumped to our thought, and it was this letter that she wrote. And it was a letter saying goodbye and promising to serve us faithfully. The letter is in her life in facsimile.
Yes, right.
That's the letter we sent to the Pope, where she rendered all her feelings. But then very typically she said, "I will never again refer to this subject." And she never did. She never let the softer side out again.
Her first letter home was memorable. "I could not say thanks, as I was afraid of breaking down, perhaps. But it is good to feel that one is trusted, and it will be a help in the days to come. I would like you to remember always, whatever happens, that I am glad you gave me the opportunity of going. I realize it's a privilege, and also that only you persisted, I personally would never have been sent. I only hope I do not fail the Legion when the work comes to be done. On November 23rd, she disembarked at Mombasa. She went to Nairobi, where she intended having her Legion headquarters. Nairobi was, at that time, changing from being a bush town to be a centre of East African business life. There were sharp differences between the different groups in language, dress, and living standards. The Catholics of Nairobi were concentrated in their own areas and made no attempt to welcome others to join their faith. The first work Edel explained to them was to give religious instructions to a group of 14 children she knew. Thus, the Presidium of the Immaculate Conception was formed. This was the first of Edel's African presidia. She had lots of difficulties to overcome. The Goans and the Europeans were reluctant to accept a woman as an organizer. However, her confident manner won them over to her side. To conquer the language barrier, she got the Tessera translated into Swahili and 6 other African dialects.
So she was in a state of constant movement like that, and this began to prove that she had to get transport. So she wrote to us and said she'd have to get a car. So we made, gave her the permission order, but made the condition that she was not, except in towns, she was not to drive it herself. And she gave beyond that, she promised that. So she bought this, what she called her Rolls Royce. It was a Ford model, and she paid £40 for it. So you can guess as to its excellence.
By 1937, she had founded enough presidia to establish a curia. At the ceremonies marking the initiation of the curia, the ethnic barriers were broken down when priests preached in Swahili and English. Archbishop Antonio Riberi, the papal nuncio to Africa, wrote to 32 bishops under his direction, recommending Edel Quinn's work to them. She was invited by them to start the Legion in their diocese. In the next 4 years, she travelled ceaselessly, from Kenya to Zanzibar, to Uganda, to Tanganyika, and even to Mauritius and the Indian Ocean. In January 1940, she braved the waters of the Indian Ocean, sailed to the island of Mauritius. Here she had to speak French, so her days in Chagny Works came in useful. In September 1940, she visited Nyasaland, where she started the Legion in 3 different parishes. Unfortunately, the journey from one place to another on a bicycle in the tremendous heat told on her, and finally she collapsed.
She was immobilized for some time, in a couple of convalescent homes. And then we got word that she was going to resume her envoyship. And we telegraphed out to her prohibiting her from doing this. And there came back from her a medical certificate from the doctor saying that it would be better, in his opinion, that she would go up to Nairobi than where she was at the moment in South Africa. We could do nothing. Off she went.
She continued her work, and within a short time had re-established her links with legionaries working in Kenya and other parts of East Africa. All this she did by mail. In December 1943, Edel began a 6-week extension tour in Tanganyika. Here she caught cold and started to lose weight very quickly. But she did not stop. Her determination knew no bounds, and people working with her marveled at her efforts to fight the tuberculosis that was gradually eating up her strength. In March 1944, she left Nairobi to travel to another part of Kenya, but the combination of tropical heat and damp climate eventually forced her to return to Nairobi a month earlier than she had planned. At 6:15 on May 12, 1944, one of the legionaries, a Miss Gannon, arrived to see Edel at the convent. She knew that Edel usually sat in a sun shelter in the convent grounds. But she had hardly taken a few steps towards the couch when she heard a cry, then a moan. Edel had bent her head, and with a last breath, she said, "Jesus, Jesus." As a delicate mark of their affection, the sisters led Edel out for her last sleep in the white habit of their order. Father Tirogli, a postulator for causes in Rome, said of her, "I have been able to refresh my spirit by once again dipping into the life of that incredible person."
First of all, she was magnificent. Now, no words could describe what an extraordinary personality she had. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. She was a radiant sort of individual. She was one of the most charming people that you could meet. Utterly and absolutely convinced about the Legion, and with a wonderful gift of persuasion. On one occasion at least, you don't know how often it happened, but on one occasion at least she fasted for 17 hours to get Holy Communion. That frail girl. And of course her courage was the courage of 100 lions. When I was speaking at the tribunal, at the canonization tribunal, they asked me at the very end. I was 3 days under questioning at that all day long. And when they said to me at the very, very end, had I any comment I'd like to make, I said that, well, that the chief one was that if she were not canonizable, then I just simply wouldn't know what the whole thing was about.